Imagine walking through the downtown of Blagoveshchensk or Vladivostok today. What stands out? Chinese everywhere. On shop signs, menus, hotel brochures, even some traffic signs. It's not a takeover in the military sense, but it's a clear signal. These cities are pivoting south, chasing trade and tourism from across the border. So is China really taking over Russia's Far East? And what does that look like on the ground? Welcome to Global Risk Profile, where we break down the headlines that matter and the ones that should. Late last year, locals in Blagoveshchensk snapped photos of new downtown direction signs in Chinese only. City officials faced questions, and soon bilingual versions appeared near the cross-border bridge. The real story? Chinese signage is popping up because the customers have changed. More customers and shoppers from China. As reported by a local outlet, this reflects a practical shift in who drives the local economy. Two key infrastructure links have blurred the old frontier. The first road bridge between Blagoveshchensk and Haihe opened in June 2022. The first rail bridge from Tongjiang to Nizhny Leninskaya followed in November 2022. This turned the Amur River from a barrier into a bustling corridor for people, timber, ore, and goods. Reuters and Al Jazeera covered the opening, noting how they've boosted cross-border flows. A decade ago, local media toured the city center of Vladivostok, decoding Chinese storefronts, a nod to rising tourist and shopper traffic from China. That trend hasn't faded. It's grown to include hotels, cafes, jewelers, and logistics hubs. Outlets like The Village, news outlets have documented this evolution, showing how businesses adapt to the influx. Is China taking over the Russian Far East? No, not with troops or territory grabs, but economically and culturally, absolutely. The footprint is expanding. Roads and rails now point south, and signs, services, and jobs chase the yuan. It's basic proximity economics, supercharged by Western sanctions and Moscow's Asia pivot. Recent Reuters reports highlight how this has deepened ties without formal annexation. Those visible markers, signs, menus, timetables, are just the tip. Beneath them, pipelines, bridges, payment systems locking the Far East into China's orbit. Next, we'll zoom out. What is Eastern Russia, and why is it a global prize? When we say Eastern Russia, picture a massive swath from Lake Baikal to the Pacific, bigger than the US, but far from empty tundra. It's a treasure trove of resources that powers industries worldwide. Why does it matter? Because whoever taps it gains leverage in energy, tech, and beyond. Eastern Siberia and the Far East hold vast oil and gas reserves. The Eastern Siberia Pacific Ocean pipeline pumps crude straight to China, while the Power of Siberia gas line delivers under a 30-year deal. These aren't just pipes, they are reshaping global energy flows. The region also boasts gold, palladium, and critical minerals essential for aerospace, electronics, and clean energy. Russia's reserves of 29 rare metals total 658 million tons per the Natural Resources Ministry's February 2025 update. Chinese firms have jumped in with joint ventures in areas like Zabakalsky Krai and Yakutia, financing extraction amid global demand spikes. Above ground, immense boreal forests supply timber exports, while leased farmland grows soybeans and crops, much heading to China. The Sea of Okhotsk and Pacific Coast are among the world's richest fisheries, yielding salmon, pollock, and crab. This area supplies over 10% of global fisheries. Rivers like the Amur provide hydroelectric power and fresh water, fueling regional growth. Eastern Russia borders China, Mongolia, North Korea, and the Pacific, closer to Beijing or Tokyo than Moscow. For centuries, this has made it Russia's gateway and vulnerability. Control its resources and corridors, and you shape Eurasia and the Pacific. Those Chinese signs are not random. They're tied to pipelines, mines, forests, and fisheries. This isn't just land, it's a strategic powerhouse the CCP eyes closely. There are no tanks rolling in. Beijing's playbook is subtler: pipelines, payments, and persistence. How is it working? Let's break it down. China is locked into Russia's exports. The ESPO pipeline feeds Daqing under long-term deals Beijing helped fund. The Power of Siberia 1, launched in 2019, secures 30 years of discounted gas. But Power of Siberia 2 still stalled. China is delaying for leverage amid ongoing pricing disputes and Mongolian holdup. Russia has become a UN proving ground. By late 2024, over 95% of bilateral trade settled in yuan or rubles, ditching dollars and euros. The yuan tops Moscow's exchange trades. But when US secondary sanctions loom, Chinese banks pause payments, giving Beijing quiet control. Consumer goods are the same story. Cars tell the tale. When Western brands exited, China now holds 62% of new car sales in 2024, up 47% from 2023. Moscow has hiked tariffs to curb the surge. The same for machinery and electronics. Russian shelves scream "Made in China." Chinese firms lease vast farmland in the Baikalsky Krai, log boreal forests via concessions, and their fleets, legal and illegal, haul Pacific catches south for processing. This builds dependency in trade and food chains. For the Far East governors, this shift spells survival. Moscow has long overlooked the region. Beijing delivers cash, labor, and infrastructure. The result? Chinese contractors build roads, farmers till land, and banks extend credit. It's not an invasion, but embedding via loans, leases, and logistics. The CCP has woven into the Far East, forcing Moscow to weigh Beijing tolerance in every move. Beijing tout the no limits partnership, but dig deeper. The economic ties reveal a lopsided dynamic. Who is really calling the shots? There is asymmetry in leverage, and gas exposes it. Europe was Gazprom's cash cow, now slammed shut. China is the fallback, but Beijing stalling Power of Siberia 2 for better terms. Every delay amps China's edge, turning Moscow into a price taker. The yuan rules the trade, but Chinese banks tread carefully. When the US hints sanctions, payments freeze. That's Beijing's subtle veto on Russia's economy. Over 60% of new cars in Russia are Chinese. This isn't just market share, it's policy sway. Shut the export tap, Russian sectors hurt. Far East leaders increasingly eye Harbin over Moscow. For Amur or Primorsky Krai, China's markets and investors are closer and more reliable. The no limits label hides limits. Beijing dodges military ties, offers minimal UN cover, and dials support to dodge Western heat. It's enough to keep Russia viable, but weak enough to stay hooked. Take Iran. Amid the 2024 Israeli strikes, China stayed cautious. No military aid, no UN shield, just oil security. Despite its strategic ties, it is transactional. Access for Beijing, not risk for allies. So, are Russia and China partners? Yes. Equals? Hardly. It's a dependency that Moscow downplays. This isn't random opportunism. It's Beijing's blueprint. The Far East slots perfectly into securing resources, testing currency, and expanding sway. For China, it's a supply dream. Oil, gas, timber, metals via land routes, dodging sea vulnerabilities like the Malacca Strait, US naval risks, Siberia's pipes, sidestepped them. Russia's the biggest yuan lab, shifting 95% of trade to yuan and rubles, tests dodging dollars. Success here? Roll it out to the Belt and Road nations. Loans, infrastructure, markets, seen in Africa's mines and Latin America's oil deals, now Russia leases and rails. Sovereignty stays formal, the terms tilt to Beijing. This creates a strategic wedge for the CCP. Deeper ties with Moscow make Western reconciliation for them tougher. Beijing gets a locked-in supplier, blocking any Russia-West thaw. The CCP plans in decades. Binding Russia's east now cements economic gravity toward Beijing, no matter Russia's politics. The far east of Russia is a lifeline, an experiment in the wedge. But are China and Russia true allies? Partnership talk aside, China and Russia aren't destined allies. History, cultures, and goals often clash. Why the mismatch? The 1960s Sino-Soviet split fractured the communist bloc. By 1969, border skirmishes on the Ussuri River escalated. Moscow even mauled nukes. That distrust lingers. Russia expanded east as a colonizer. Qing China lost turf via unequal treaties. Beijing's education keeps those memories alive. Russia as taker, not kin. Russia is a besieged empire craving buffers and bargains. China sees itself as a civilizational state with economic might and patience. They align against the US, but visions diverge. Today's tie is pragmatic. Russia is sanctioned, China the lender and buyer. But Beijing gives minimally, keeping it brittle. No limits? Limits abound. Convenience, not destiny. Fiction sometimes nails strategy or exposes an era's blind spots. Tom Clancy's 2000 novel, The Bear and the Dragon, does both. How does this stack against today? In Clancy's scenario, China crashes economically, invades Siberia for resources. And the twist is, in the story, Russia pivots west. The US allies with it against Beijing. Clancy got right the resource logic. Siberia's energy, metal, forests, and fisheries. A Eurasian jackpot. And China as a challenger. What he may have gotten wrong is one. Clancy saw tanks invading Russia. In reality, it's contracts, loans, and pipelines. Quieter and often more effective. And the second thing, Clancy thought that the CCP could reform itself. That's not happening. In Clancy's tale, Russia shifts west thanks to Jack Ryan, the president's credibility, integrity, and strategy. Fiction, but true. Relations hinge on people. Leaders' character and competence can unlock doors. We have seen China's leaders' mettle. If global counterparts from the US, Europe, or Asia blend integrity and skill, it could reshape alliances. Debates rage on who fits that mold, but the point transcends personalities or ideologies. Choices now could help Russia pry itself from China's pull or forge new balances. Left, right, or center, hope lies in effective leadership. Clancy nailed the stakes, but missed the players' natures. Resources and triangles endure. Leadership could tip it. We have traced Beijing's embedding itself in the Far East. But imagine an alternative, a US-led corridor for peace, giving Russia economic options without rewarding aggression while easing Ukraine's war. The concept? Like Ukraine's Black Sea grain deals, tie limited resource exports to ceasefire compliance. Focus on Eastern Russia's minerals, energy, and metals. How might it work? As a pilot, monitored exports of palladium for catalysts or titanium for aerospace to Japan and South Korea. Payments via audited escrows with snapback if Russia breaks the terms. Moscow will gain buyers beyond China, reclaiming leverage. The Far East becomes less a Chinese outpost and more a bargaining asset. Japan and South Korea secure minerals at fair prices, cutting out China reliance. Their cars, chips, and planes get resilient. For China, it would be a blow. Less tonnage under Beijing's thumb breaks the monopoly and reminds Moscow of alternatives. Enforcement would be tricky. The public may cry reward for aggression. China could retaliate. Russia could pocket gains without honoring deals. So keep it conditional, narrow, and reversible. It is risky, but the upside, Ukraine relief, allies' strength, and loosened China grip. And the Russians may glimpse life beyond Beijing. We began with Chinese signs in Russian streets, small symbols of a big tilt south towards Beijing. Eastern Russia is a resource giant. The CCP has secured it via contracts, leases, trade dominance, and finance. Sanctioned Russia had few choices, yielding a dependent tie, not equal. For Beijing, they get resource-locked, UN test, and a wedge between Russia and the West. For Moscow, survival, but its sovereignty is eroded. The open question is, could the US and its allies like Japan and Europe offer alternatives? A corridor for peace, linking access to Ukraine, de-escalation, bolstering Asia, easing Moscow's bind. Risks abound, but it hints at creative diplomacy where Beijing isn't the sole winner. The human factor is also important. Leaders matter. We have seen China's approach. If counterparts around the world show integrity and competence, calculations may shift from Moscow to beyond. The time is now. Across ideologies, there is hope for leaders who will foster respect and clarity and steer history to a better place. Eastern Russia isn't just about resources. It's about how the world will be shaped. This is it for this episode of Global Risk Profile. If you found it useful, thoughtful, or just different, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. Remember, the headlines may change, but the deeper patterns rarely do. Thanks for listening, and stay sharp.